Welcome back. It's still VOP this morning on Voice of the People television. And we have to move straight down to the number one topic of discussion on our radar this morning. The All Workers Convergence, AWC, in Nigeria has declared that anyone opposing the planned protest against hunger in Nigeria is an enemy of the people. And this statement was signed by the AWC National Coordinator, Comrade Andrew Emelieze. And it was released on Monday, just yesterday, as Bayo Ononoga was of the opinion that Peter Obi is the one trying to champion the August 1st protest, and also talking about him going to be arrested. And some people also come up to say that cannot happen. The hunger in the land is what is championing the people and their protest demand. We believe that by August, according to some Nigerians, the 1st of August, they should have protests to talk about how individuals in Nigeria are not really happy about the hunger and multidimensional poverty Nigerians are passing through. And with that, the AWC asserts that protesting against bad governance, hunger, and insecurity is a legitimate right. The group emphasized that the protest is a necessary response to the hardship Nigerians are facing, aiming to fight against hunger and hardship. And the statement reiterated support for ongoing protests until the system benefits the public, condemning those against the protest as enemies of the people and calling for unity among organizers to combat corruption, bad governance, and exploitation. Meanwhile, a coalition of civil society organizations led by Rising Up for a United Nigeria, that is RUN, and coalition of civil society groups of national stability and cohesion have urged Nigerians to distance themselves from the planned August 1st nationwide protest against the Bola TINUBU'S administration. Convener of RUN, Solomon Adodo, a convener of Empowerment for Unemployed Youth Initiative, Danesi Momo, and convener for Guardians of Democracy and Development, Igwe Ude Umanta, advised Nigerians not to allow themselves to be used as tools by unpatriotic persons to destabilize the country in the name of national protest or strike. And joining us to make sense of this topic this morning, we have with us in the studio Segun Shokbeton, Chairman, Accountability Council and Transparency Network. Good morning, Mr. Segun. Good to have you in today's show.
Good morning, guys.
And also joining us virtually is Mr. Chukuma Okoro, who is a journalist and a public affairs analyst. Good morning, Mr. Chukuma.
Good morning, Fina. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you in today's show. We have the issue of the August 1st protest before our table this morning. Now, Mr. Chukuma, some people have come up to say that Nigerians should not go on to protest, saying that it is going to be unpatriotic of them to this administration. And then other people are saying, anyone that says we should not protest in this country, it's more like being against Nigerians. What do you make of those statements? Be like we're having double people now, those for and those against. What do you make of this?
You know, Fina, it's normal. It's normal for things like this to happen. Some people will naturally be for and others will be against. So it's not out of place if you see Nigerians who have come out to say, oh, please don't be part of this protest. It's obvious that, one, the government has infiltrated the rank of the protesters. That is one. Two, the government is also planning its own. That is one of the downsides of giving upfront information if you want to undergo a protest. If you want to undertake a protest against the government, against established institutions, you first of all sound a warning, you fly the kite, to perceive how their responses are going to be. And you say you want to do a protest and give it like 2 weeks upfront date. Do you expect the government to keep quiet? It's obvious that the government wouldn't keep quiet. That's exactly what is happening. Most protests that have impact, that make meaning and change the course of history in society are unplanned. They are just spontaneous. Bam! They take off. If you look at the history of most revolutions, that's how they started, unplanned. But for you to have given the government the opportunity to say, oh, we are going to undergo a protest, do you expect the government to fold its hands and allow you overturn it? It won't happen, especially when we have a protectionist regime, as we have in Nigeria, where the only thing they do, the only thing they understand is how to protect themselves. So, Fina, that is what is actually happening. Now, it's natural that you have some for and some against, but at the end of the day, it is clear that the will of the people will prevail. Those who want to protest should be allowed to protest. But the point is, if you want to protest, you should do that under the cover of the police so that renegades, so that other forces will not come to hijack the protest. And in most cases, this is the government that sponsors the other forces to get into the mix, to cause trouble, to cause tension, to cause anarchy, as we are looking at what is happening now. If you look at the statements of Mr. Bayo Ononuga, and Fina, before I continue, I think it would be right to call the president to ask him to rein in Mr. Bayo Ononuga. Mr. Bayo Ononuga has been making very inflammatory statements. Mr. Bayo Ononuga has stoked ethnic tension for as long as he occupied that office. Bayo Ononuga is trying to cause trouble between peaceful Yoruba and Igbo people who have lived together for over hundreds of years. Mr. Bayo Ononuga, by his uncontrolled, unguided statements, is trying to cause problems in this country. And I'm actually disappointed if that is what made him gain that position as a special aide on media to the governor, to the president. Mr. Bayo Ononuga should understand clearly that the elections are over. This is time for actual governance. And expect him that his job, his duty, he should understand. He's a fine journalist. His responsibility is to showcase the good works of his principal. If for any reason Bayo Ononuga feels strongly against this strike, against this protest, what I expect him to do is to reel out economic figures, indices, that should convince Nigerians. Look, there's no reason for us to protest. Look at, there's a trajectory. The economy is going up. We just need to make minor sacrifices over time, as the government itself is making, as the leadership is making. That is what I expect Mr. Bayo Ononuga to do, and not to resort to calling names. He puts out this government as very intolerable, highly unmanageable level of intolerance. He's making this government to be toxic. He's demarcating his principal. He's making enemies for Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Right. That is not the right way to go. And I expect the president to rein him in. Otherwise, it will be interpreted that the president is the one prompting him.
Interesting. Well, thank you so very much, Mr. Shugma. I'm going to come to you, Mr. Shogun. At this point, it's looking more like the government is a bit concerned about this process, basically looking at antecedents that have followed the other protests within Africa, particularly Kenya. Now, what do you think would be the implication of all of these comments made by the government as against this protest, and of course the name calling?
Well, I mean, it's not unusual to see governments react this way when the people say that they want to protest. You know, it's not the first time we're going to hear this. All protests that has happened, that have been well planned and that has occurred as planned, have been opposed by government officials and government apologists. They have, look, it's a template. Everything that is happening now is the same dance that we've been through before. Government spokespeople are going to come out and accuse the organizers of trying to disrupt the country, of trying to create chaos. They're going to throw a bit of threats. They're going to throw a bit of blackmail. It's the same old game. I will just say that it's a bit unfortunate that our politicians have remained resolute in their insensitivity towards the plight of the people and have continued to toy with the lives of people. Have continued to treat people as though they were really insensitive to pawn pieces in a chessboard.
Mr. Shegu, are they really insensitive to the plight of the people, given the fact that the sitting president you have now once called for a particular government to be gone? He said because this particular government is not treating Nigerians well, that he's calling on them to leave. And, you know, we can also remember how he also held another protest against a sitting government, you know, when he wanted to chime in his own opinion to make sure that Nigeria move forward. Now that we have him now as the president of Nigeria, is it that he's really insensitive or he does not have the political will to do the bidding of the people?
No, he's insensitive. He's not just insensitive, he's totally disconnected from reality. And we must understand this about majority of our political
Someone
actors.
who has once called for a protest and someone who has actually championed for a government to go. How insensitive is he?
He has been a part of government. Even when he was calling for that protest, he was controlling Lagos. He was the one that ruled Lagos by proxy at that time. So this man has been in government since 1999, and he has not been outside of the government circles. So he's disconnected from reality. A lot of these guys simply don't understand. They can't feel the plight of the people, or they feel it but they don't care. It's one or the other for them. So for these guys to raise the specter of anarchy and say all of this funny stuff that they're saying, accusing political opponents of being sponsors of protests, these are all the typical gimmicks that you see in authoritarian rulers. And I think that it's important for them to understand that no matter what they say, when push comes to shove and when the back of the camel breaks, the protests are going to happen. And there's something that Chukuma said that I think is very instructive, and I want to take a slightly different angle. Protests are better when they are planned. They're better. They will achieve broadly
so you disagree
positive.
That the spontaneity in a protest will make it more effective?
That spontaneity is exactly what government needs to be afraid of. The protest that happened in Kenya was not spontaneous. And look at how it went. It was properly planned. The logistical organization that happened beneath the ground, using the instrumentality of social media, USSD codes and all that, was very massive. NSAS was not spontaneous. And look at how it went. What happens with spontaneous protests is that it's organic, it's driven by anger, rather than a strategy and an objective. They just want to vent. When that happens, they will burn the country down. And I think it's important that government recognizes this, that when people are actually organizing a protest, you should embrace them. Call them to a table and discuss with them. Try to identify who the organizers are and engage in dialogue. So the protest is supposed to achieve exactly that, to come to the table so you fix the concerns of the people. If you allow people to just enter the streets out of anger and hunger, my brother, none of us, even those of us sitting at this table, we will be perceived as enemies. Because you look at your suit, you are look at Fina, looking very fine. You look as if you are chopping well. The anger will recognize you as enemies. So it's very important for us, even those of us driving the conversation, to ensure that government listens well on time before the spontaneous one starts.
But the way it's going, will the government, is the government showing any, like, are they actually moving to, like, listening to the cry and words of Nigerians?
They don't seem to care.
About, for example, we have the issue of the minimum wage. It's lingered for so long, even got to a point. The president, I'm talking about Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, telling the NLC that if they have an eye on his seat as a president, he should wait for 2027. And these are the people talking about how their minimum wage act is not being met. It has expired, and no one is talking about it. It dragged till this point, particular time. Now, when you talk about the government hearing the cry of the people, are they even listening? Because if they are listening, I don't think that the likes of the president of the Senate will tell Nigerians that no amount of blackmail will make them not to do what they need to do in buying the presidential fleet. Akpabio said he just requires the president to talk about the fleet, and he will go ahead to do it. Even when Nigerians are saying we don't have money to eat. Electricity tariff hike is there. There's no fuel subsidy. The yams in the market, people are dividing yams now to buy. The tomatoes, how many pieces is what you get as seedlings, and you care for like 4,000 or thereabout. There is no social amenity being provided by the government. Don't you actually think that they are not listening to the
No, they're definitely not listening, and they're definitely insensitive, just like I said before. And I think that is the problem. You see, what Chukuma said earlier may likely happen. If the government continues on this trajectory of showing this level of insensitivity and a lack of concern and this terrible disconnect, with the people, the spontaneous one will happen. Okay. And when it does, we'll all be in trouble.
Okay. All right, then. Let's quickly get. Let me come to Chukuma now. Now we know that that statement came out from Bayo Onanuga. The presidency has not refuted it, but there's a statement that's credited to the police now. The IGP has refuted that statement. Now, you are a historian, and we cannot take away the knowledge of history if we're trying to move forward in life. Let's take it back to recent history, going back to 2023. Statements were made during the elections. Certain individuals that were said to be close to the seat of power or close to those running for elections made statements that were divisionary in nature. Nothing was done as to arresting them or bringing them to justice. Can we truly dissociate government agencies like the police and the presidency from these statements that have been made? Should we be concerned? Should we be concerned? Is this speaking to the perception of those that are shielding the president from the reality? And if this is speaking to their perception of how Nigeria is, then what is the unity that we clamor for in Nigeria?
Moses, we are going to do a little bit of history here. You know, permit me to, before I come to you, I just want to, Shegu also raised a very important point that I would like to talk about. You see, the thing about spontaneity of protests and how impactful they are, you know, in changing the course of history. I would like us to go a little bit back to the history we are talking about. The Russian Revolution, was it spontaneous or not? It was. Okay. Piecemeal. The French Revolution that cost the liberty, the freedom that you and I take for granted today, was it planned or spontaneous? It was spontaneous. People got aggrieved. The social level of social discontent was very high. They just went and, you know, members of and they killed the nobles, the estates, the generals. They started killing. At that point, I'm not promoting violence. I'm not asking anybody to kill anybody. At that point, Napoleon Bonaparte, the signature, the figure, the man that has the imprimatur of having led the French Revolution, wasn't even part of it. Nigerians are protesting every other day on social media. Every other day. Go to X, go to Twitter, X, Facebook. Nigerians are protesting. And let us come back. The Arab Spring in Tunisia, when Mohammed El-Bouazizi burned himself, wasn't it spontaneous? Was it planned? Let us go back to Romania in 1989, when Nicolae Ceausescu was running a repressive regime in Romania. One day he called people together in what looks like an Eagle Square and started reeling out what he has done for them. I did this for you, I did it. It took one woman to shout liar. And after 3 minutes, 10 people shouted liar. After 5 minutes, 100 people shouted liar. That was how the Romanian Revolution, known as the Orange Revolution, that was how it started. The armed forces, the army that was protecting him, when he ordered for them to turn the turret against the people, the army rather turned the turret against him. They caught his wife, Elena, beheaded her on that square. That was how spontaneous the Romanian Revolution was. And today, if you go to Eastern Europe, Romania is one of the best economies. It might not be the best, but it is doing very well. So the whole issue of planned revolution is that, or planned protests rather, is that the government will have ample time to infiltrate down tension as they are doing, which from so many angles. Legislators have slashed their salaries by half for 6 months so that after this, the profligacy they will go back to it and Nigeria moves on as we are.
But in the advent of social media, let me just chime in. In the advent of social media, our studio guest cited the Kenyan protest, which actually was driven by TikTok and other social media applications. Right. Do you think that wasn't effective enough? Because the history you cited, social media was not existent at the time.
I've not seen anybody come out with a loudspeaker to. Everything is being organized on social media. And I said that Nigerians have been protesting every other day. But for a date, this is the day to roll out. Okay. You don't expect the government to sit down and watch you over.
All right then, but can you recall the question I asked? Are you still going to?
Let me answer your.
All right,
go ahead. Answer your question about perception and reality and how the police force is playing a role. in this whole issue. Now, the police the statement that was made by the police discovered that it was very illegal for them to say do not protest, because it is unconstitutional for the police to say do not protest. What the police should have done and what they are doing now, or what they have done now, is to tell people, look, even if you have to protest, you don't have to do it violently. And I expect that the police will give cover to protesters to ensure that undesirable elements will not infiltrate, will not hijack the protest. That is the duty of the police to do, and not to sound a note of warning. And I'm happy too that the protesters have also said that if anybody is harmed, if anybody is arrested, or if anybody is in the protest by the agents of government, that they are going to double the intensity of what they intend to do. Moses, you don't expect the police to go against the government, because it's an instrument of coercion owned by the government. So if you talk about the perception and the reality of it, yes, the government uses the police as an instrument of coercion to do whatever it wants.
All right.
Like you made mention to, there are people who made inflammatory statements, hate speeches, and all of that. How many of them were arrested by the police? Nobody. But in this case now, it's turned against the government, and we see the police jump out to say, oh, you don't have to do this. And they are going back and forth with their statements. Confusion everywhere. The police force is confused, the government is confused and insensitive, everybody is confused. And the youth, Nigerians, have taken it upon themselves. And mind you, when they say they want to protest, they are not asking to pull down the government. They are asking the government to promise to be what it promised to be. Look at, there is hunger in the land. There is social content, it's very high. It has reached its apogee.
I'd like to stay with you. I'd like to stay with you, Mr. Chukwuma. Now, my question will be very direct. Do you think that with the recent move about this protest, is there a possibility that we would achieve good governance impacting on Nigerians? That's on one part. Secondly, you did mention security, and I'd like to stay with you also on that. The Minister for State for Defense, I'm talking about Mr. Matawali, did say that the present Zamfara state government should follow suit on what he did when he was governor, and which is negotiating with the bandits as well as having amnesty for these bandits. Now, this is a serving minister, and the government, the presidency, is not calling anyone to order, knowing fully well that at this point, Zamfara state is boiling with top insecurity. The state government is saying, no, we're not following your route. We're taking our own decision. Again, all of this goes to say that the man at the helm of affairs, that's the presidency, is also mum on all of this. Don't you think this is another major reason why Nigerians are clamoring for good governance, following and using the protest pattern?
David, everything points to every indices, social, economic, political, security, points to the fact that Nigeria is misgoverned. Nigeria is not properly governed. So when the people say, look, we want to protest, they know what they mean. They know what they are saying. There is hunger in the land. There is insecurity in the land. Inflation is soaring. Within 13 months of this government, inflation soared from 22.3 to 34.13%. In 1 year. Just 1 year. Inflation. Fina made mention of Nigerians cutting tubers of yam. Sellers cutting tubers of yam so that Nigerians can afford them. So everything speaks to the fact that, look, there is a need for this protest. And I keep saying, the protest is not meant to pull the government down. It is just to hold it accountable so that the government can feel the level of discontent, the level of suffering in the society, so that they will understand and rejig. They need to revive the economy. They need to understand that the people are suffering. Nobody is asking the protesters to pull down the government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Nobody is calling for anarchy. This is not a coup d'etat. As people like people like Onanoga are branding it. No, it is not a coup d'etat. It's an expression of how people feel, how Nigerians feel.
It's interesting.
Okay.
It's interesting.
You need to do things better.
It's interesting you mentioned
You know, that
expression.
is what.
It's interesting you mentioned expression. I'm going to just have to hold you on that. Maybe you need to land that thought. Finish on your thoughts. Let me just allow you.
You know, so David, the issue of protest is not to pull down anybody. It's just to hold the government to account.
Right.
And when you talk about somebody like Matawale wasn't even a good pick in the first place. He was a political pick.
But he was
How
picked.
could you pick somebody who was rejected by his people for a second term because of high level of insecurity? You took the same man and made him Minister of State for Defense. A man that came from a state that had failed woefully in terms of insecurity. Now you took a man, a politician, and made him Minister of Defense. In the history of this country, ministers of defense have always been retired generals who know what defense and insecurity are all about. But we didn't get that from this president.
It's been said that this president is large on his peaks when it comes to appointments. And I dare say at this point, and I'm going to come to you, Mr. Shegun, I dare say at this point that if this is a means for compensation, I'm talking about the appointment of Matawale as the Minister for State of Defense, isn't it about time that the present administration looked at rejigging its ministers? Because obviously quite a lot of the ministries are not doing well. Isn't it about time that this present administration rejig? Now, that's on one part. Another question I want to find out is, why is the government not talking to the particular situation of good governance that the people are asking for, but rather fighting and fingering other people as the ones who are responsible and sponsoring this protest? These two questions, quickly.
Well, so for the Matawale question, I think that question needs to be asked regarding maybe about 80% of the cabinet members of this administration. Let me give you just one example. Very similar to Matawale's appointment. A person that was fingered on record has been a baggist, a bagman for a military, one of the most corrupt military administrations that we had in this country, right? Everybody knows the story. It's documented in the United States that this guy was almost pretty much convicted for this thing. So it's not hearsay. But that person was appointed to no other office but to the budget office, the person that is responsible for planning our finances. So a person that was pretty much well known to be, I'm trying to choose my words carefully because this, almost like a criminal, and a graft man, an enabler of corruption was put in that office. Similar to the Matawale case where somebody that has failed woefully on security matters in his own domain was appointed to come and head the military, It's ridiculous. And you can pick out other appointments like that in this administration. One of the things that the supporters of this government preached, of this particular president preached during the campaigns, was that, oh my God, he is a fantastic recruiter of talent, that he always picks people and puts round pegs in round holes. I'm sorry, what we're seeing now is no different from what we had under President Buhari, and it looks to me as if there's not going to be any rejigging because this president is more interested in getting a second term already.
Bringing it back to the table of protests that Nigerians are talking about for the 1st of August, some people have said that the protests actually will bring anarchy and disturbance or destruction in Nigeria. We have the likes of Sheikh Gumi, who has actually been playing the part of intermediary between the government and the bandits now, saying that, going for this protest, it's going to cause anarchy. And not just him also, we also have some people, Sunday Dare also saying that a planned nationwide protest is problematic to this present administration. They were actually calling for a dialogue. But do you think that this call for dialogue will actually make headway, given the fact that we actually went for confab of 2014, up until today, we are yet to implement what we got from that confab? That's a dialogue, one dialogue that Nigerians have actually gone for. So do you think dialogue will actually make way this time around?
And I would like you to really speak to the comments by Sheikh Gumi.
I actually wanted to do that,
Yeah.
I mean, Sheikh Gumi, it's incredible to listen to a man who has on record defended bandits and criminals in this country. People that abduct and kill Nigerians in their thousands, right? This man has come out to say they are not criminals. He has come out to say they are not terrorists. He has come out to say that they are actually protesting. He used those words. He said they are protesting, they're expressing their feelings of injustice and marginalization. These are the things that Shegumi said. It is shocking to my bone marrows to find that the same Shegumi is now saying that protests that is being organized by hungry citizens of this country, endangered citizens of this country that are being killed by the people that Gumi is defending as acting as spokesperson for, is now saying that that is going to cause chaos in the country. I mean, what sort of irony and, it's ridiculous. I think that Shegumi really, I don't even know why he hasn't been arrested, because I think he knows a lot. He knows more than we the rest of ordinary citizens know.
Does this point to the fact that there might be some hijackers when that protest comes?
Yeah, sure.
If and when.
Absolutely. And I think that Chukwuma made reference to that. These things happen. It's not new. What I would expect that the organizers of the protests will do is to have a contingency plan against that. You can't really stop it.
But now that the police have come up to say that Nigeria should not engage in the protest, what other contingent plans do you think Nigerians need to go on for now?
What I mean by contingency plan is that if you're planning a protest, you can actually deploy part of the organizational team to provide surveillance and intelligence in quotes during the protest to ensure that it's not infiltrated.
Because of time. Before I'll react to that, and I'd like you to, before we take your concluding thoughts on this one, let me come to Mr. Okoro now. Well, you do know that in 2020, during the NSAS protest, some of the organizers acted like a surveillance team, arrested certain individuals who were perpetrating destruction and handed them over to the police. But we don't know if those individuals were taken into custody by the police. Instead, what we saw was buses with government inscription driving to the grounds of the protest with individuals coming out and basically hijacking the protest. Now, as you respond to that one, I would also take you back to 2023. Right after elections, there was the talk about certain individuals wanting to take over the country, planning a coup. The names of Peter Obi was mentioned. Name of Peter Obi, I beg your pardon, was mentioned, and certain individuals as well. Now we're having the same mentioning of names as those responsible for this planned protest. Is this propaganda, or is this something that we should be, Nigerians in general, should be concerned about? How would you describe government's actions in all of this?
It's very simple to understand that the government is just being protectionist. The government is just being protectionist. It needs to protect itself.
Being a protectionist, and then mentioning names of individuals, Patu Tomi, Peter Obi, shouldn't these individuals be suing the government in this regard?
Yes, I was coming to that, and I'm happy too that Professor Patu Tomi has said that if Bayo Ononuga doesn't provide evidence, credible evidence that links him to the organizers of the protest, that he is going to sue him to a tune of 500 billion naira. I did say that, and I'm happy. I also said it yesterday in Political Voice that I expect the security agencies to invite Bayo Ononuga. Looks like he knows something that all of us don't know. He has information that we don't have, about the people that are protesting. Again, people that are planning the protest. He mentioned names like Badamosi in Lagos State. He mentioned Patu Tomi. He mentioned P2B. He mentioned IPOB and a couple of other names. So it's interesting to see how the police is going to react, how the security agencies are going to react to this, in making sure that, look, if Bayo Ononuga has credible evidence, I think we should give him thumbs up. He should provide that. so that we can now begin to look at the personalities of people who are probably masquerading as the saviors or messiahs, while on the other hand, they are trying to pull down the government. So that is one thing the security forces need to do.
All right.
From Bayo Ononoga. Moses, I'm coming. You asked a question. Now, it's also good that you mentioned how the police arrested some people, the organizers arrested some people and handed them over to the police. And that was the last time we heard about. That creates an unmistakable link between what happened in NSAS and the role of the government using the police force. Moses, when push comes to shove, as he did in Romania, you ask the policeman to arrest, he will rather arrest you. Yes. So in all of this, but I know you'll be wanting me to give my concluding thoughts. I want to shock people, whether if it is a shock or what. And I want us to, I'm a student of, let me indulge myself a little. I'm a student of history and a good one at that. So I understand the history of Nigerian politics. Moses, this protest that is planned on August 1st, if it ever holds, it's not going to make any impact. Do you ask me why?
Why, please?
Because Lagos State, which is the melting point of Nigerian politics, which is the hotbed of protests and strikes in Nigeria, is not going to be part of it. And the moment Lagos is not part of it, forget it. It will fizzle out in a matter of 2-3 days, at most 1 week, and nothing is going to come out of it. So the people that are asking you to dialogue, let me ask them, for how long are we going to dialogue? We have members of the National Assembly we sent to go and represent us. What are they doing there? Is it not dialogue? So how long? And Gumi is asking us to wait until January 1. Probably inflation will have hit 50% by then.
All right, then.
And probably millions of Nigerians will have died. So who will be dialoguing with at that moment? So it is too condescending, to see people,
All right.
reasonable men,
Okay.
who are supposed to guide us.
All right, we'd like you to give us your concluding thoughts now.
Yes, my concluding thought is this. Nigerians have every right to hold a protest. But like Shegu said, the organizers should ensure that they have bodies within themselves to make sure that the protest is not hijacked. Already the government is making efforts to infiltrate it.
All right, then.
Okay.
They should not allow the government to cause anarchy and scapegoat some people.
Okay.
That is my final word.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chukwuma Okoro. Mr. Segun Shokwiton, your thoughts as well.
Well, I mean, look, protests are an instrument of engagement by the people, the citizens of any country,
Right.
in the governance process. And without that engagement, good governance will never happen. So I think that it's very good that people are saying they want to protest. We must encourage them. We must, advise them on how to ensure that the protest succeed and hope it does succeed without descending into anarchy. So for me, it's all systems go. If it works out, very good for Nigeria. If it doesn't work out, we'll try again. It's obvious that the government will not listen to the voice of reason. We've been talking. I come on this show. I go on different platforms, TV, radio, regularly. Other people do the same. And we've been providing answers to the questions of governance in Nigeria. They never listen. So I think the only language they do understand is the language of protests. So let people try and do their protest. If it works out, we will all be better for it.
Try, he said.
Yes, try is the word.
All right, then we'll wrap up this. Now, when we come back, we'll be delving into another conversation. The Senate and the National Council for Women's Society, NTWS, are seeking inclusion of domestic servants in the National Minimum Wage Scheme. How effective can this be? Let's talk about this one when we come back.